Hey, everybody. Welcome to Advocacy and Hope. I am Amy Post, your host, and I really appreciate you tuning in today. Love to spend a little bit of time with you guys talking about a really cool subject today. Once again, just always appreciate your time and tuning in, and hopefully you guys will be able to take away some really cool things from today's podcast. I've been diving into some different topics, super excited to kind of be just transitioning into something new, but I also just always want to share with you guys how much I appreciate your support of everybody reaching out. I really am so thankful for everybody out there. So keep doing it because it's really keeping me going and I appreciate it. And all the prayers, I certainly feel them all. So thank you so much. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. So today I'm super excited to introduce a new friend and colleague, Mark Murphy. And Mark and I tried to get on several podcasts. We have not been able to. I think this will be the perfect time. Mark's having a great day. I am as well. It's a little gloomy here in St. Louis today, but we're going to make it work. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Amy. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm glad to. Mark, what I know about you is that you are just an incredible human being. I think you've been extremely gracious. I think I love your passion and dedication, but you're a podcast host. You're an author of an incredible book that I finished up just a couple of months ago. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Are you a father of five? Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yeah, we have 5 kids, right?
I have two, and it feels like five.
It's something I've always wanted and something that brings great joy, but it also is exhausting. And it's like playing whack-a-mole because you get 4 kids going well and one pops up and then you got to whack them down and somebody else pops up on and dealing with those issues. But to me, family is everything. And I think that ultimately family's got to be described broadly. It doesn't just mean the people that are your blood relatives. Family can go a lot broader than just blood.
That's very true. And I think so many of us feel that out there. And I think that is absolutely fantastic. Well, kudos to you, 5 kids. That's amazing. Like I said, I have 2, and it does feel like I have 5 some days, and they totally go different directions. You've done so many great things, but I also was recently introduced to you last fall. So we've kind of been in communication for many months, started working together, but was introduced to you by a great friend, Amber Vilhauer, when I was at the Books and Business in Austin. And so that was really cool. Just being able to be introduced to you and kind of see the scope of what you do with your podcast, your book. Your business is tremendous. I mean, I think everybody just respects you so much. And Amber has spoken so highly about you. You're just guy to go to for great information, great guidance, trustworthy, and really helping people set their lives up for success. And I love it.
I think the thing that is missing to me, you get to be 60 years old. And so you get to now work with people. I have a few people I work with. I'm talking about people that work with me and for me. I have a few that are older than me. Most are now younger than me. In fact, some of them, many of them are now in their early 20s or early and mid 20s. And I think that I feel sorry for them in the sense I feel that they have so much incredible opportunity and so many things for them. But the place that I feel sorry for them is that I think with smartphones, with the technology that's out there, with the artificial intelligence, with the fact that nobody wants to be in a real relationship with people anymore. People would like to live their entire life on text, or they'd like to be. One of the things I find when I see young people at sporting events is they don't cheer because they're used to being passive. So they could be in a stadium with the most exciting play of the whole game where the stadium's uproarious and cheering and yelling and there's an explosion of noise, and they sit there because they're used to not having interaction with people. They're used to living a world almost as a voyeur. And the idea is that when I started my company in 1985, this was always, I thought we'd be successful, I thought we'd make money, but this was really my vehicle to make other people's lives better. And I identified that I was always at my best when I was serving other people. And the idea is that ultimately I think that the whole point of being involved in any business or any venture personally is that we as human beings have something where we can have this interconnection to each other, where we can care deeply about each other, and that we've created a world of divisiveness and selfishness where the real joy in life is in the giving. The mitzvah is in the giving. So the idea is that I think that a lot of young people are being denied that opportunity to have that real connection and to really feel the joy of serving others.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, my son is almost 17, my daughter is 13, and they're just really in the midst of it. It's very difficult to really kind of talk them through it. They're right there. I agree so much with what you said. And I think that sometimes kids these days don't know how to hold a conversation. They don't need to write anything down. They can just ask Siri or ask, the phone to just write it for them, artificial intelligence. It's really sad. And I think being a parent now more than ever, I mean, to be a good parent, a great parent for that matter, it's the hardest job in the world to do it right. And I think that the social media and everything that's going on in the devices, it's so challenging in such a new way that we tell our kids all the time, we're trying to help you. We love you. We take away the phones, take take away all of that and just get them outside every chance we can. Get them outside, do something, get fresh air, get exercise, be involved, be around people, just do the best you possibly can.
The thing I think that I want to try to instill in the young people that I get to a chance to move is some grittiness. Because you think that with all of the things, it's not that younger people are not smart. They're very, very smart. They have high IQ. What they're missing, though, is the three other types of intelligence on some level. One is EQ, which is emotional quotient, where they can't read a room. Some better than that, but they haven't really participated. They haven't enough experience because they're in a passive world. Or they're used to sociability where, I remember when we were kids, 20 kids at our house on a Friday night in the basement, play video games in their own bedroom by themselves, sometimes with friends and sometimes not. And so the social quotient is missing. But I think the biggest intelligence that we need to help people with is AQ, which is adversity quotient. And so everything is great when everything's going well. But when that adversity hits, how do you turn that problem into an opportunity? How do you flip the script? It's not how you think about it. It's not the problem you deal with. It's how you think about the problem. And I think people are unprepared. And so one of the reasons that I have such great respect for you is anyone who's watching this podcast knows your story and the adversity that you have faced. And the fact that the one thing I do know about you is somebody could knock you down today, and I hope they don't, but somebody could knock you down. But I do know one thing, you're going to get up again. And if they knock you down again, you're going to get up just one more time, then you get knocked down. And I think so many folks that when they have a little adversity, they grab a gallon of Haagen-Dazs and a blanket and crawl under the covers and never come back again. They're knocked out. And I think that grittiness is what we need to do to help people with. And because unfortunately, I look back, there's an expression where people say, like, you get 100 people and everybody throws their problems into the center. And almost everybody said, I'll take my problems back because your problems are worse than my problems. I think in most cases, or certainly in a high percentage of cases, that's the case. But everybody gets thrown curveballs. And the idea is, how do you deal with it? How do you deal when that adversity comes? Because it's going to come. So it's not what happens. It's what you do when it occurs. And what I also love is when you make a mistake, and I make mistakes all the time. And I think the idea is that the natural inclination is to hide it or to cover up the mistake or to go do it. But I think the right thing to do is apologize. You clean up your mess. You make sure it never happens again. And I think when you do that, people are very forgiving. Most people are, but they also become very trusting because they know you're going to become, that's the kind of integrity and the kind of person you are, as opposed to, can I trust what that person says? And I think that ultimately that's the beginning. Trust is the beginning of having those great relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was blessed to go through that challenge with my daughter. I was absolutely blessed to be that person beside her. And it's not that it wasn't difficult. It was extremely difficult. It's just, I chose that we weren't going to be the victim at all. And so I think just having that mind frame, but also just looking at it through different lenses with a different perspective. And I was that perfect person to be there for her. And I know that. And that's okay that it wasn't someone else. I think that we all have gifts. And I truly feel that God really kind of carved mine out and really kind of showed mine. And I talk about it in the book. And I really just want people to know that, they don't need to be fearful when challenge comes, because it's like you said, it's not if it will come, it's when, and how are you going to show up and be prepared? And as we were talking before the show, in your book, you state that you are surprised about how so many people are unprepared for whatever. And I've interviewed so many families, and I really started back several months ago interviewing families of their children that were diagnosed with a deadly disease or cancer or something horrific occurred to them, and they're never able to live on their own any longer. And so it's these situations that are just absolutely devastating. And the number one thing that they were and had issues and huge challenges with, they weren't financially prepared. They weren't thinking about what would happen and if they would lose everything they had worked for, their house, their vehicles, their jobs, everything. And so that to me was really eye-opening, because I do know we went through that. But it was one of the number one things that I chose when my daughter has the other two diagnoses. How are we going to show up and prepare better? I don't get the opportunity to offload any of these challenges that we're going to face. We know that we're going to face them with her in the future, and we're going to face many more challenges. So my challenge to myself was, how are we going to show up differently than we did the first time that it was a complete surprise? But thankfully, we were so prepared that we didn't lose anything. And I was able to be in the hospital with her for so long. And I don't think that many people had that opportunity. I saw too many children there by themselves with no parents at all. I was wondering what was happening, what was going on. So I think that preparation, but it doesn't have to be fearful. You can welcome it. And if the challenge is in your life, aren't as awful as you thought they were going to be, or somebody else, like you said, they'll have a worse challenge and things are more difficult for them than for you. You've got something really positive to say about, what you've been doing in that preparation.
I think in our businesses, financial advisors or key business strategists and critical thinkers and financial advisors is what people really pay you for is to peek around corners. That ultimately all of the terrible things like losing your job or a child becoming sick or a death in the family or a lawsuit or any kind of, we can sit here and name dozens and dozens of setbacks that most people are going to have one or more of those things come over the course of their lifetime in their life. Those things, it seems to me that I'm always flabbergasted when it happens and people are like, I never thought that would happen. I never get divorced. 50% of all first marriages end in divorce and 65% of all second marriages. Like, you never thought that it would be possible that you would get divorced and prepared of what would look like after you got divorced. And so I keep thinking that you've got to be most people are reactive around that, but where you can anticipate that those things will happen. And I don't mean you want to be looking for bad things to happen, but you can anticipate what could happen and how do you prepare yourself. And I think it also starts with people have bad values around money. I think that, one of the things that I feel sad about early in my career is I would sit down with somebody who was in financial trouble and I would help them clean up out of their debt mess. And then maybe I would also help them make more money. I'd help them grow their business. I'd help them get a better job. I'd help them get the problem. And I'd come back a year or two later, their problems were more massive than when we started because all they did is had more tools or more money to continue to make more bad behaviors. It was almost like, taking a drug addict to rehab and then buying them cocaine. And I think the idea that they didn't have the tools not to relapse into those bad money habits or those bad life habits. And again, that doesn't mean that you have to save all your money. That doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice or suffer. I just think that you have to have some intentionality around it. And even very, very sophisticated, wealthy people, there's been studies done that said they spend more time planning a family vacation than they do working on their finances. I don't understand why it's a verboten subject because it's so jugular to having money and having security is so jugular to having a life by design, because so many of the things that you would want to do for yourself or for others can only occur if you have financial stability. So why would that not be one of the rocks or tenets of the things that you want to do?
I don't know what your thoughts on this might be. I've thought a lot about it back through all of the situations that we went through. I was really caught off guard with the diagnosis just out of the blue one day. Our daughter had malignant liver cancer, and then she also has a very rare genetic cancer gene. And then on top of that, I found out after I researched huge amounts was that the genetic gene that she has does not make any money. So it's not researched. It's just kind of thrown in this big pile where nobody looks at it again. And you're just kind of left to figure it out and hope that the doctors are doing the right thing and hope you're on the right path. And so I think in very, very traumatic situations like that, or whatever the situation is, it's traumatic no matter what. But I don't know if many people have the ability to think rational. It's so hard to think rational on a normal day sometimes about what that would look like. I mean, we all know we're going to die someday, but we don't want to think about it. We don't set up the appropriate trust or will. We don't think about those around us sometimes. We don't sit down and really kind of sketch that out. But when you're in the midst of that hurricane, I think it's much more difficult to make the right decision and really know. And it does surprise me as my research has been kind of unfolding over the last many years that, like you said, people don't plan. And I don't know why, because if you've got something that is coming up, if you've got your playbook, your kind of journey in life, like we do, we know that these 2 additional cancers are coming. And we actually know what ages they're coming. So I can prepare and we can prepare as a family so much better that when they get there and as we lead up to them, our story is just written for us. I mean, we just kind of have our path already written. And I don't understand how people can at least kind of take a step back, take very small steps one at a time and really kind of sketch something like that out. But you've had a lot of success working with people and maybe they have made a complete disaster out of their finances. Or maybe they're wanting to kind of start thinking about it now. Talk us through kind of that process and what you do or what happens, because it is a very touchy subject.
I mean, it clearly is. I always say money is never math. It's always psychological. Everything in life is psychological. I think that part of it is part of the skill is in life, they always say that the good ones tell, the great ones ask. And so I think in life in general, whether it be in finance or in any business, it's being able to allow people to discover what they want. And whoever asks the best questions always wins. In your day job and in your entrepreneurial pursuits, I mean, I think it's always the best questions. I mean, I'm sure that's the best questions when you're in pharmaceutical sales. That's the best questions when you're in financial sales, when you're a lawyer, when you're an accountant, when you're there. I think people, that goes back to that human interaction, is people, what's the one expression I love, that they don't want to know how much you know, so they know how much you care. And I think ultimately what you have to do is create a safe environment, because it is psychological. And everybody has different reasons why they're not doing what they're doing. And so to me, I always say to myself, I'm thinking of myself as like the highest paid social worker in America, just because at the end of the day, part of that process, to be able to sit down and create a very safe environment where people can actually share with you what their concerns are or what their problems are. That's easier, though, than actually daring to dream of what their life could be. To be able to sit back and say, here's where I am right now, but here's my highest potential. And here's what I've always dreamed that I thought I could do. And I never thought I had the tools, or I had a roadmap, or I had something to be able to live that life by design, or to have the kind of life that I wanted to have. I never thought these things were possible. And all of a sudden, when you start to sit with those people and you start to understand not only where they started, but where they are right now, but where they want to go, and you could put something together, you see the tremendous excitement, because some people think they're not deserving. Some people just don't know how to do it. Some people have all kinds of limiting mindsets, and you go, hey, your past is basically, to me, just a series of decisions that you've made. That's what your past is. So if that's true, then your future is the series of decisions that you're going to make going into the future. And so the idea is that the only thing you do is learn from them and have wisdom from those issues. But then you can take that knowledge to then leave that behind and start to make all the right decisions for where your life is going forward. And I think that's the process. And I think, so many people start, well, you should put the money in real estate, or you should put the money in the stock market, or you should put the money in insurance, you got to save more, you got to do, and all of those things might be part of the process. But I would say that, to me, in the financial world, let me give you an example. If you talk to people in most businesses, including my world, the financial world, and they said to you, Amy, I want you to be the best. You said to me, Mark, I want to be the best golfer in the world. And I'm pulling that randomly. What they say is, you know what, Amy, all you got to do is, I've got the best set of golf clubs, and I've got these balls that travel further than any other balls, and you got to have the right, glove and this right stuff, and you'll be the best golfer in the world. Now, I can tell you, I have the best set of golf clubs, and I have the balls that go the furthest, and I'm in the woods all day. I'm a terrible golfer. So if it was just about having the right set of golf clubs, I would be the best golfer in the world. And I'm pretty sure if you give your favorite golfer, I don't know who the top golfers are right now, Rory McIlroy or Dustin Johnson, or whoever the top golfers are right now. But I'm pretty sure if you give them a decent set of golf clubs, they'll hit the ball a mile down the middle of the fairway. And so what I think you want to do is, I want our clients to have the very best golf clubs. They deserve the very best golf clubs. But I want to work on their financial swing. I want to work on their psychological swing. I want to work on their life swing, so that they can have the best life possible. I think that's the difference in the process of that's what's the most important thing.
Sometimes, and I won't make a blanket statement of everybody thinks when they look at certain people that have great lifestyle or great career or have gotten to wherever they are, they don't realize how much time and dedication and work that it really takes to get there. I know, starting my new journey, I've heard anywhere from 7 to 10 years has kind of been that standard to get where you are and be super successful. And I'm not saying that sticking point, but I am saying I think people need to make sure that they're aware that, they can give themselves grace. If you fail and something doesn't turn out right, get back up and start again and try something else. And I do think, like we were talking, it's really tough. I think people don't want to admit their faults, or when something didn't work, or then you're in a marriage of you guys aren't on the same page, and you both aren't doing things together, or one spouse is totally disconnected from all the finances or understanding why, the other spouse is doing something specific. I've dug in really deep with a lot of these families of, they didn't have a situation that turned out well. Why didn't it turn out well? And why did they split up? And if it was because of finances, it always seemed that they were on two separate paths, or one felt they had to absolutely be perfect. And when one thing didn't turn out right, it just really threw such huge wrenches in the situation. But I don't think that they knew how to communicate well. One of the things that my husband and I vowed to do from the very beginning is we were both going to do every single job of any company that we bought or any business. We would do every job, and then we would offload it to somebody else. If we were doing our finances or a whole life or stocks, whatever that looked like, We would both be in it. We would sit in meetings together. We would do it together so we could have good conversation, but also be able to really kind of just know exactly where we were going. And if it didn't turn out well, it wasn't sitting on one spouse's plate. And I don't know if that makes sense, but it just seems as though that's what I've been learning and struggled so much with my husband. I mean, I vowed never to be part of that 90%. In the beginning, 10 years ago, I didn't understand the 90% of couples who had a child diagnosed cancer or a disease, or they died or something happened. I didn't realize that 90% was going to be so huge for me moving forward. But that is just so heart-wrenching. But then when you really dig in, we're not able to get on the same page. I love that you're able to kind of talk about this with me today, because it's near and dear to my heart.
You talk about like your own life, your own places. One of the things to me is every Irish Catholic kid wants to go to Notre Dame, and I was lucky enough to get into Notre Dame. But my father had a heart attack Christmas Day, my senior year of high school, and the money dried up, and so I went to Indiana University, which I think was Notre Dame was like 13,000 a year back then. Indiana was like 6, and you got some money for SAT scores and that kind of stuff. And I could work my way through school. I worked 2 jobs in the summer, and I bounced during school at night. I could pay my way through, and that's why I'm always so grateful to Indiana and the Kelley Business School, because it gave me a launching pad to do what I wanted to do then. But you talk about people being not on the same page. I remember my parents. I was not involved. I was in my early 20s, and my parents basically ran their life on credit cards and just got credit cards until they could get no more credit. And when they finally brought this to my attention, because they finally had no other choice, my mother's comment was, well, I pay my credit card for $200 every month. Like that was my father's problem. It was not her problem. She was divorced from the subject, and they made decisions. They died in the early 90s. They'd made it, didn't have a great life, I don't think, or although I'd like to think I gave them a better life than they would have had, but died just during COVID, not from COVID, but during COVID. I think the issue for them is that they were never a unit. People that keep all their finances separate, they keep their decision-making separate, that they're still, not all into the relationship. That I think that, because of the affluence of this country, because of the laws, because of society's norms, you don't have to burn the boats and be all in. So anytime anything gets tough, it's easier to just run away. It's easier to just walk away. And I find myself from doing this for a long time now. Like, I'll find that somebody who's been married 3 or 4 times, I'll sometimes say to them, I've said this before. I've said, it seems to me, Joe, the problem you had in your first marriage, just recreated yourself in the second marriage, just with a different person. And the third marriage, maybe the issue isn't them. Maybe the issue is, what's going to cause this fourth marriage to be more successful, because the first 3 ended exactly the same way with exactly the same issues. So 10,000 Frenchmen can't be wrong. Maybe there's some things you need to look at to be able to help you be successful in the next chapter of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to take away from this. Tell the audience, I mean, we can kind of backtrack just slightly to tell the audience just a little bit more about you. I know you put some, great achievements. You've had some amazing achievements. So I would love to just kind of hear a little bit about that, and then what got you into the industry, and also definitely don't want to forget about the book, because it's just, and I featured it on my social media, but I think it's great.
Well, anybody has Google can know who we are. And Eckhart Tolle, I'm paraphrasing what he says, and he says there are 2 suitcases you have on this earth. And the first suitcase is the egoic one, where you can say, well, Forbes magazine says I'm the number 3 financial advisor in the world, or I had the number 1 book on Amazon last year, or I've got a top 40 podcast, or I'm on this board, or I've got this, all these egoic achievements of things that we've done to make other people successful. I call those, that's your egoic suitcase you can't take with you. And so you can find that out, and you've got, as I said, I'm proud of everything I've accomplished and worked very, very hard to do that, to help a lot of people. But he also says there's another suitcase, Amy, and he says that's the one you can take with you. And he says that when you realize that who you are is all you've got, then you can decide the kind of person you want to be. And so, as much as I'm so proud of all those accomplishments, and I could take all the awards and all the money we've made and all the recognition, I'm proud of that. But to me, that's the egoic stuff. It's the stuff of who you are. I say that again, is when he says that who you are is all you've got, then you can decide the kind of person you want to be. And so what I want to sit down is, I want to help people. I want to as I said, make a difference in the lives of all the people we touch. So again, I've always kept our process very simple. I want to sit down with people, and I want to find out how they think about their money and their business and their family and their life and all the things that are important to them. And I also steal from the medical profession when I say, diagnosis without examination is malpractice. So at the end of that meeting, I'm going to need some information, I'm not Kreskin or a fortune teller. I need information to come back. But then you have another meeting with people and you lay out comments, recommendations, and a clear strategy going forward. And I think that ultimately, we seem to work, move forward with almost everybody we speak to, because it's not going to be my plan for them. It's going to be their plan, and it's a plan that they help create. And only an insane person rejects a plan that he or she helped create. You can always reject my plan, but you can't reject your plan. And I think the idea is to start with, as my friend Dennis Marble says, it's a life by design. Money is only one piece of the puzzle. It's really trying to take a look at is who you are and what you want to be, and that's very individualistic. The problem I have with the financial services industry, they're a hammer looking for a nail. You just got to buy this insurance policy, or we have four platforms to invest money. Are you a 1, 2, 3, or 4? And they're just shoving everybody's money into one of those 4 program trades, or buying the same insurance policy, or getting the same mortgage, or doing the same thing that everybody's doing. And nobody's really getting ahead. Nobody's really creating the multi-generational wealth they should. And so we're sort of known as the people that help people create multi-generational wealth. And I'm proud of that, but I feel better that we're helping people create that life that they want. That they're sitting down and saying, hey, I never thought I could do this, or this is my dream to be able to go do this. And I don't know what their dream is, but when they discover it, or when they share it with us, that's the stuff that changes lives. Because I look at everything through the prism of the Japanese term ikigai. I get a chance to talk to. I'm at the age now where a lot of my friends want me to talk to their kids, give them advice, or give them, and they're saying, well, should I go to this career? Should I go to law school? Should I take this job? Should I do whatever? I look at that. I look at everything through this prism as well, because the only thing we all have in common is we only have 24 hours in a day. It's always time and attention. So when I'm sitting, so if I was going to sit with one of your children and ask that question, I would ask them 4 questions. I would say to them, are you passionate about this? So the first question is, if you're asking me, should I go into this field or take this job? I go, are you passionate about it? If the answer is yes, let's go to question 2. If the answer is no, it's next. And it can't be a yes, in my opinion, to 2 of the 4 or 3 of the 4, or even 4 of the 4 questions. It should be a hell yeah to all 4. So the first question is, am I passionate about it? The second question is, am I good at it? Or could I be good at it? Third question, does the world need that product or service? And then the fourth is, can I get paid to do it? And so if it's a hell yeah to all 4 of those things, I think you found your place. Because how sad for so many people that all they're trying to do is get to Friday night, get to the weekend, get to retirement. I only have 6 years, 4 months, 11 days, and 12 hours left, and then I can retire. And I'm going, what a life poorly lived. What I think people want to do, and what I'd like people to do, is people always say to me, first of all, they say you have a lot of energy. And I go, I have a lot of energy because it doesn't take a lot of work to be who you are. It takes a lot of work to be other people. So you take a lot of energy. But when I sit down, but people always say, what is your work-life balance like? I'm sure you get the same thing. You're doing a million things. And to me, it's very clear. I don't have a work-life balance. I have a life. And I just go from one thing I love to something I love more to something I love even better. And I'm lucky enough at this point in my life, I can delegate or pay people to do things I don't want to do. I didn't have that opportunity when you grow up dumb and broke and suffer in New York. But one of the reasons to get to where we've gotten is so I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. And the thing I would suggest, if you're 22 years old, 32 years old, 52 years old, 82 years old, is I would suggest you take a piece of paper out every 6 months or every year and put a line down the middle and a T at the top. And on the left side, write everything you hate about your job or your business. And on the right side, I write down everything I'd be doing in retirement that I'm not doing right now. And so if you were 40 years old, I would say, let's get rid of some stuff on the left. We can't get rid of it all. But let's see if we can get rid of some things on the left side of the column. Let's see if we can add some things on the right side of the column. And why retire at 65 years old? Why don't you retire at 40? Because if you're doing all the things you want to do and not doing the things you don't want to do, who retires from that? To me, is a great life. And so that's something that I focus on. And it's allowed me to really enjoy my life because I'm always in elegance, excellence, and creation fascination mode because I'm only doing the things I want to do.
I think that's brilliant. I don't know what the actual percentage is. I know I've heard it recently of, the percentage of people who are not doing what they want to do and they're not happy in their job or career or whatever. I think that the number is staggering. But to me, that's extremely, extremely sad. And I think it's your perspective of how you look at everything, setting out your goals, writing them down, I think that that is huge. And just being able to go back and reflect on them, because I think without goals, it's very difficult to navigate. And for many people, I think, myself especially, I know with my husband and I going through what we were going through, of just being able to write them down and hand them to the other person so they know what your goals are, and they don't always have to align, just you each know what the other one's goals are and how each of them thinks about finance. Because I will guarantee you, most people that get married, you're not going to have those identical feelings about, oh, word for word, each spouse feels the exact same way about their finances, or how they think about money, or how they spend money, or what they saw growing up with money and what they've taken as baggage with them. When you're in those really hard crisis times and you haven't prepared what you needed to prepare, I think it makes it much more difficult then to even try to figure out a plan, but a good plan for sure. And I think it just makes it much more difficult.
I haven't shared this. I shared this with a few people 38 years ago, but I remember being qualifying for this financial services conference when I was like 24 years old. And there was probably 2,500 people who had qualified for this thing. And I was like the guy, the youngest guy in the last seat in the row, the back of the room, didn't know anything. And so I'm 24, and I've been there like a hot minute. I'm like a nobody. It's there. I'm still a nobody, but I was really a nobody then. I heard this guy get up at this banquet in front of like 2,000 people, and he was named president of the organization. They had elected him the president of this organization. And I heard the speech he gave that night. I was in Keystone, Colorado. I went back to my hotel room that night, and I wrote the speech that I was going to give, that I gave 13 years later when I was president of that organization. And so the idea is that, to me, it's always about visualization, and it's about writing it down, as you said, that Jobs write it down, that ultimately that all of a sudden it became possible. You're familiar with the crabs in the barrel analogy, where when people start to do well financially, they start to look better, they lose weight, they get themselves in shape. The people around them are not generally happy for them. They're like crabs in the barrel. They try to crab out of the barrel, and the other crabs drag them down. I remember the person who was my boss at the time. I sat down, I then came back and go, here's my plan that I'm going to put together so that I can be the number one person at this organization. And then he said, well, there's tens of thousands of people here. He goes, the chance of a guy like you being number one is very remote. And I don't know anybody who makes that kind of money in this industry. I just don't think it's possible. It was very clear to me that I never wanted to talk to him again about this. That was his limiting mindset of what was possible. And I could go through everything that was done. It was come not to prove it to somebody else, but to sit down and to do it with intentionality, meaning it wasn't just, hey, wouldn't it be great if I could be that president? It then came back and then put together an action plan or a preparation of what you needed to do to be able to have a chance to be able to do that with no guarantee. I think that's the place, is that when you talk to people, so many people will tell you what they'd like to do, but virtually nobody will tell you exactly what they are going to do to be able to go do that. And I think that's one of the things that we have to do, not only as a financial advisor, but as a friend, is to help them hold themselves accountable to what they want to do, and then help them put together a plan that will give them the high probability of success, so that the improbable becomes probable, the probable becomes definite. That's what people need, rather than another money manager.
I think that the accountability is huge. I mean, you are right. You are there. I mean, social worker, but I think you've got just such a cool aspect about it. And I don't know if you have clients that are coming to you that just have that unrealistic thought process. I don't know if you have to walk them through kind of what that looks like. I'm sure you have to walk them through all kinds of different scenarios. But let me ask you a question too. I mean, on average, what is the average age of clients that you're working with? What does that look like?
Well, obviously, we've got a large organization now, so we're working with people at all ages. I'm obviously working on some more interesting and some famous cases. And at this point, it's just my little clubhouse where I just want to work with people I care about. And I think it has less to do with that. Of course, would we like people that are doing more interesting things, or more, have more money, or those sort of things? Of course we do. But I think we're in the people business. We're not in the financial service business. And so one of the things that I did about 20 years ago is I tried to clone our top clients. I tried to find similarities. And I found our top clients generally were big thinkers. I generally thought they were loyal. I generally thought they wanted to be in transformational rather than transactional relationships. They appreciated our expertise. I could go on and give you 4 or 5 other things that were common to most of our top clients. And I kind of sat with that for a couple of years because I couldn't figure out what to do with it. And then I realized that's who we were. That you wanted to work with the people like yourself. So the people that have our core values or people that had our outlook on life were people. I want to work with high integrity people. I've walked away from a lot of business with people who wanted to cut corners, even if it wasn't illegal. And one of our mantras is there's no right way to do the wrong thing. I don't care how much money is involved. We're not doing anything, even if it's legal. We're not doing it if it's not the right thing. Even when no one's looking, you got to do the right thing. I mean, you can't live with yourself, and I'm not going to surround myself with anybody who thinks differently than that. And so, but it's also okay to have big, hairy, audacious goals too. It's good. It's more. And by the way, you may have to talk some people down and help them discover that may not be possible. You may not be able to fly, without a plane or things like that. But I think for a lot of people, it's helping them get clarity on their plan and what they want to execute. Because remember, it's not really my plan; it's really their plan. And you want to help people to go do that. You want to change their lives because it's never about the splash; it's always about the rip. So the idea to me is if I can help you create abundance in your life, or you can help me create abundance in my life, well, that's great. But how many other people are we going to affect because of that experience? Just like in a negative experience, how is that? How many people are you could ruin someone's day or make someone's day with just a kind word. And the other thing I also think, it's always about mindset. I said it before. It's never about the problem. It's how you think about the problem. So when that adversity comes, you have to deal with that adversity. But I also think your mind should also be able to go, what's great about that? To look for the opportunity of what's that allowed you to do because of that. I mean, I think if you thought long and hard about your situation with your family and with your daughter, anybody objectively looking at it, they would think it's tragedy to have some young girls had all of these medical setbacks. If we looked at it, I bet if we looked at it hard, there's probably a half a dozen or a dozen things that you and your family would not have been able to experience. And there's some great things that came out of this tragedy. Because we could focus on just, oh, woe is me and how tough is my life and our family, and it's been just a nightmare and this and that. Not that we don't have to deal with that, but there's also been good things that have come out of that as well. Maybe your family's been closer together. Maybe you've got to spend more time together. There's been people that have come into your life as a result of that you would have never had met had you not had this tragedy. So I'm not saying, hey, this was a great thing and great. Everybody should have this adversity that you've had, and you can focus on that. But I want to focus just as much time on all the other things that were so great that you've gotten to experience and your family's got to experience because of the situation. I don't know. How do you think about it?
I think one of my biggest statements that I say now is that suffering brings perseverance, no matter what you want to think about it. And if you'll think about it that way, it's probably always how it is. I mean, whatever you're going through, I mean, you probably, hopefully, persevered in some way. But if you'll look at it that way and what it can benefit you and how much better you can grow. And we had all kinds of setbacks. And I mean, I just wanted to be in the corner of that hospital room every single day and just tears, just bawling my eyes out. And times I didn't think I could go on and I didn't want to go on. But those were few and far between. But I do feel that every challenge and those sufferings always create an opportunity for us to persevere, see what's next, but it is how we think about it. And I've now had the opportunity, almost 10 years later and as I was writing the book, it was one of the most healing things I've ever done. It was bittersweet, but I gave myself the ability to look back through all of those years and see everything that maybe I wasn't seeing clearly in a different perspective. And I do feel that helped us be able to move forward in so many better ways. I mean, I think we're all going to hang on to so many things that can affect all kinds of other things. And I don't want to get up on my soapbox, but, a main thing that really affected us was the way that I felt about my spouse. And I've asked many, many families about, what was the turmoil? And I told you finances and their relationships, and each spouse going through those kinds of things. Everybody's on their own journey and they think about it in their own way and they have persevered in their own way. But if you don't come together and have conversations about that, it's detrimental. And I really gave myself grace and the opportunity to look back and see that my husband and I were on two completely different journeys. At first, I felt it was denial and he didn't, want to be there with me. And I felt, we all kind of feel, well, they should understand what we're feeling. They should feel what we're feeling. It just doesn't happen that way. But that really gave us an opportunity to look forward and see things in a different perspective and how we were going to grow and make things better moving forward. And then create that plan of how it was going to happen.
One of the things when I think about what people want, from a financial advisor. And I'm not just talking about financial security or abundance wealth or all those things that are important. But I think that you want to give them three things. You want to give them direction and that they have a clear path along the journey. You want to give them some creativity. Some of it's simple, some of it's sophisticated, but it's mom and apple pie stuff. Nothing under the table, everything, above the table. But the third thing is what jogged my memory, what you said is the third thing people want is they want companionship. And they want somebody that's there every step along the way on the journey. Not somebody that here's a planning, let me know how it works out in 5 years. They want somebody that's a companionship on the journey. And I think that the other thing is when adversity strikes like it did for your family, and it does for so many families, including my own, is you see who people are. Because when everything's going right, the world is your friend. When you can help people or you're powerful, there's things you can do to help people, everybody wants to be around you. But when there's nothing for them to get, you see who's really there, and you see it's very clear to you who are your real friends and who are your acquaintances. And, we started this conversation talking about family. And I said family is not only who you're related to, but family can be the people who are there for you every time. And I'm sure there were some people prior to your daughter getting sick that you thought were friends that really turned out to be acquaintances, or maybe not even acquaintances. I, as myself, as a friend, always think that, hey, when things are going tough for somebody, that's when they really need you. They don't need you when everything's going well, because they got a lot of people. And I've always tried to be that kind of friend to people, that where I would want to overfunction or be there at that time because I thought that was the critical time for people, because I've seen so many people be abandoned by people they thought were really there.
Yeah, and I think I've had a chance to really reflect on that a lot. I mean, those are really good points. I think if we don't have that tribe of individuals around us that hold us accountable and uplift us, but also, give us the ability to give ourselves grace. But that accountability in such a positive way is so important. And I know that my husband and I really started talking about those aspects several years ago, just, keeping each other accountable and finding others that do, and just being able to, have those tough conversations. But also in interviewing, different families, it is so hard. Once again, I keep going back to this of if you are in that emotional stress, everybody handles stress so differently, and we can't expect that other person to know where we are and to meet us where we are. Sometimes it's very hard to meet another person where they are in their emotional journey, let alone if you're even trying to communicate it at all, and let alone then if you're throwing in finances, or you don't have enough savings, or you haven't done things right. And I think there's a huge difference between trying to get out of debt and building that wealth, or like you speak of, this generational wealth of being able to live the life that you want. And I think it's great that you have the ability to do that. And I'm sure that your clients do stay with you for so long because you just take a different perspective in this. I was going to ask you, you've said so many great things, and I had one of my questions about, what's the best advice that you've ever received through your life? But you may have already stated it, because you've stated so many wonderful things that are sticking to me, and I'm sure that they're really resonating with those out there. But I don't know if you have any other advice, like you remember back in those moments of the best advice that was so clear.
I would say the joke answer. I read Charlie Munger. I was reading something in the paper this morning or online. I was reading the paper on Charlie Munger made a quote. That was Warren Buffett's number 2, who just died at 99 a few months ago. And they asked him about what advice or what he would do. He said, I'd find out where I was going to die and I'd never go there. I think ultimately that I'd like people to have the courage to have the life that they want to have, that they're not living their life for their spouse or for their kids or for their parents or for other folks. And I think none of us get out of this life alive. And so let's start living today in terms of doing the things that you need to do. And that doesn't mean that people I've got 5 kids I can't walk away from. They want to eat. And not that I would ever want to do that. But the idea is, like, some people have some responsibilities and things that are there. There's nothing sadder. I remember grandfather who died when I was like 2 or 3 years old. They never did anything. He was very successful. And he traveled all the time. He traveled from Labor Day to Memorial Day, and then played golf all summer, is what I was told. He retired at 65, and they had never done much because he had just worked like crazy. He was dead like 3 months later, or like there was it was all the plans. And so part of, I think part of the thing around money is that you got to balance in your life. You got to plan. You got to live today. So I'm not one of those guys that says, don't buy that pack of gum, Amy. Don't take that trip. Don't give your kid that opportunity. But again, it's in balance. You need to have a thoughtful plan in place so that you can have your best life. You can live the life you want now. You can keep it that way forever and never run out of money. We're always willing to help anybody that wants to be helped. The question I have for you was interesting. We've just really started to get to know each other over the last year or even a little less than a year. Obviously, you're successful. You're obviously very smart. You're also you reek of just being a very, very good person. And I think part of being a good person is we just have wisdom. So in a vacuum, we probably would have continued to just evolve and grow from our 20s to our 30s to our 40s and beyond. But I wonder, does the adversity that you had, how did that affect you as a person? You were always the person. I would have recognized you at 6 years old, much less today as the same person, just grown. How do you think that affected you in terms of the woman you are today? And if that had not happened, how might you have been different?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I remember telling my husband after our daughter was diagnosed, she and I would spend a month at a time in the hospital, and we would get to go home for about 24 hours. Sometimes it was 48 hours, and it was always different. We were always called directly back. And I remember telling my husband, I'll never be the same person ever again. I realized, my appreciation for so many things were different. I mean, I'm a very driven person. I have been from a really, really young age. I started owning small businesses at the age of 15. And I actually had my first business for Wayne Newton, and I'm not opposed to say, I worked hard. I had a mowing service and landscaping for Wayne Newton. He bought our property in the Ozarks, and that's how I kind of just started my life. And then I owned small businesses. So I've been very driven, but that experience of such trauma and such devastation and being caught off guard was something that really propelled me forward. One, to advocate for myself. I think God really showed me how to advocate for myself and for my daughter. I've always stood up for myself, but I had the ability. I was in those moments, and I'm like, how do I move the needle forward today has always been one of those things. And at the end of the day, how did I move the needle forward? Whether or not that was with friendships or business or whatever, there's just questions I always asked myself each morning and each evening. And I'd have a little sticky note, on my mirror at home and on my computer. But it's truly having that appreciation of every minute, because I remember thinking, so mad. I was so angry at the world and what had happened to us in the very beginning. And I couldn't find God. It was very difficult. My faith was just rocked. And I know a lot of people can relate to that. You just want to be angry and you go through so many different emotions. Then I remember thinking that I was so blessed to have those 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it was, at home, to go home, have a good night's rest. And then I was just prepared and ready to go back to the hospital again. And it was just what it was. We then kind of moved forward, and I set different boundaries. I set very healthy boundaries I had learned about how to set healthy boundaries in my 20s, but I really started utilizing that tool when I was in my 30s, and especially after my daughter was diagnosed. And I set those healthy boundaries for my work and for my spouse and for my kids and everything in my life, and really allowed myself to do things and spend time with a family that I really hadn't done before, and not taking the cell phone to the dinner table and not taking it out with us and not answering calls, or just different things that we did. And I think for anybody listening out there, it's just, you don't know what you're going to do tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen to you. And I think just being able to make the most of every minute and not take things or people for granted, and surround yourself by really great people that, uplift you and that you can uplift them, and they make you feel good and they can hold you accountable. It's that, like I talked, it's that healthy accountability. And that kind of network will just, I think, move your life forward in ways that you've never thought about. But just being more intentional about everything was something else that I made sure of. And for years and years, I mean, I felt a lot of shame, and I felt guilt that I didn't get a lot of time with my son, because my son was 6 when my daughter was diagnosed. And I probably missed about at least 3 years, if not more, with him. And there was a lot of guilt. So I think just, being able to give myself grace, and I think everybody out there needs to do that, and know that you're not perfect, but just be able to move forward the next day, turn the page. The next day is another opportunity, but don't miss something that you have the opportunity to do, or to say to someone, or pick up the phone and call them. Don't text them, call them, or just do something. I tell my kids all the time, Mark, now it's like, every single day, go out and do something nice for someone. And it was going to be amazing how great it's going to feel for you, and just kind of changing their perspective. So I know I kind of got off on a tangent, but what happened to my daughter changed my life in ways that I will never imagine. And it's bittersweet. It's a curse and a blessing all in one, because I was able to learn things that I didn't realize about myself. But if I could tell people that one thing is, do not take one moment for granted, and don't miss out opportunities to reach out to somebody or spend time with somebody. Put work on the back burner. It'll be there tomorrow. Just spend that quality time with those people that you love.
By the way, I've enjoyed this podcast. I enjoy our relationship that I have with you and your family. As I said, one of the things that I'm very hopeful of the relationship that we're developing within our little networking group is that maybe we can do more things together to create a bigger, better future for more people, or to impact the lives of more people by working together, working collaboratively, not just you and I, but with everybody that wants to make that difference. I'd love nothing more than positively impact the lives of 100 million people. And I'm only one person, and you're only one person, but maybe by collaborating together with others, we can make it even more, maybe more impact than we could alone. That's what gets me excited about the relationship that we're developing. All I can tell you is I just thank you for having me on your podcast. I enjoyed this, and just thank you.
I appreciate you, Mark. And I think what you had said that you wanted to share when we asked you that, what do you want to tell others? And you saying that you just want to share hope, gratitude, and love, and that entrepreneurial mindset. I think that is absolutely fantastic. Where can the audience find you if they want to go ahead and look you up, reach out to you for some advice?
They can reach out to me at Mark_Murphy at northeastprivate.com is my email, or they can Google us at Northeast Private Client Group, where our headquarters are Roseland, New Jersey. There's a couple of Northeast Private Client Groups in other fields. I'm Mark Murphy. And, as I said, if there's anybody that wants to create multi-generational wealth, or who doesn't think they can create multi-generational wealth, I'm telling you they can. I'd love to help them have a better life.
That's great. And we'll go ahead and put everything on the social media. We'll have everything on the podcast, but also you can pick up Mark's book. This is a tremendous read, The Ultimate Investment. So definitely pick it up. I will feature it on the podcast as well as the social media again. But Mark, thank you so much. It was really just a pleasure. You're a cool, amazing individual, and I love the relationship that we've built. And I appreciate you.
Thank you, my friend. Right back at you.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Catch us next time, but we appreciate your time, and thank you so much for everything that you have given us and all the prayers and shout outs. We appreciate you. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Advocacy and Hope podcast with host Amy Post. Please check out the show notes for all of the guests' bios and information and links to follow to learn more even after the episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes, and please share it out to those who need to hear this inspiring message. You can subscribe, rate, and review all of this on your favorite podcast platform, and we sincerely thank you for spending some time with us today.